What if the smallest acts of kindness could change everything? In a world where we often feel lost, sometimes it's the quietest gestures that spark the greatest transformations. The hum of conversation around them, combined with the clinking of mugs and the sound of keyboards tapping, felt strangely distant. It was the same routine. Every day, wake up, go to work, go home, repeat. Nothing felt exciting anymore. In fact, nothing felt much of anything. At 28, Alex had expected life to be more than this, more than the endless cycle of mediocrity. The job at the tech startup, though steady, left them feeling empty. The deadlines and pressure of the corporate world had slowly eroded their passion. It wasn't that Alex wasn't capable. They were more than competent at what they did. It was just that something vital inside them had been drained over time. And now, all they could do was drag themselves through the motions, hoping for something to change, but unsure of what exactly. They'd never been particularly popular or outgoing. Socializing had always felt like a chore, and as they grew older, the loneliness grew more palpable. The few friends they had drifted away as their own lives took different directions. Alex wasn't upset by it. It was just the way things were. After all, who needed deep connections when you could simply go through life as a passive observer? But deep inside, there was a flicker of hope, a tiny voice that occasionally whispered that things didn't have to stay this way. It was a thought that Alex kept pushing aside, convinced that it was nothing more than a pipe dream, something meant for people who weren't stuck in the trenches of the day-to-day grind. That morning, like many others, Alex had woken up with the same sense of dread. The thought of going to work, dealing with the same faces, the same emails, the same monotonous tasks was enough to make their stomach churn. But it was a job, and that was all that mattered. At least, that's what they kept telling themselves. As Alex absent-mindedly scrolled through their phone, an old friend from college messaged them. "Hey, I know it's been a while, but I was just thinking of you. How's everything going?" Alex stared at the message for a long time. There was a time when such a message would have sparked excitement, maybe even a rush of warmth. But now, it felt unfamiliar. Could it be that they'd changed so much, that even simple interactions felt like a distant memory? After a moment of hesitation, Alex typed a quick response. "Hey, things are okay. Work is busy. How about you?" The response came almost instantly. "Same here. But you know, I've been doing this new thing lately. I've been trying to pay more attention to the little things. Acts of kindness, you know? I've found that even the smallest things can make a difference. It's been making a big difference in my mood. You should try it." Alex blinked at the screen. Acts of kindness? The thought was so foreign, so far removed from the reality they had come to accept. Life wasn't about kindness, at least not for someone like them. It was about getting through the day, getting to the weekend, surviving until the next vacation, and the idea that small gestures could change someone's mood or outlook on life seemed almost naive. Still, something about the message lingered in Alex's mind. Maybe it was the sincerity in their friend's words, or maybe it was just a fleeting desire to believe that something as simple as kindness could make life a little brighter. But at that moment, Alex didn't act on it. They simply locked the phone, paid for their coffee, and left the shop, heading to the office where the daily grind awaited. As they walked, the weight of the world felt a little heavier, the gray sky above mirroring their mood. They tried to shake it off. After all, it was just another Tuesday. But deep down, Alex couldn't help but feel like something was missing. They didn't know what it was, but they knew it wasn't a simple, fleeting feeling. It was deeper than that. It was a sense of longing for something more than what life had become. And yet, despite all this, they couldn't shake the thought of kindness. It had somehow lodged itself in their mind, refusing to be ignored. It would be a while before they realized just how much that fleeting idea would change their life forever. The day carried on as usual. Alex trudged through the hours, answering emails, attending meetings, and doing everything necessary to keep the wheels of the business turning. But despite their outward professionalism, their mind kept wandering, back to that strange conversation with their old friend. Acts of kindness, the words echoed in their head, almost like a riddle they couldn't quite solve. It wasn't that Alex was completely devoid of kindness. They were polite when necessary, offered a helping hand when asked, and tried to maintain a cordial relationship with those around them. But these actions were mechanical, done out of obligation, not out of any true desire to connect with others or make the world a better place. The idea of small acts of kindness transforming someone's day seemed a little too simplistic, too idealistic. As the afternoon wore on, Alex's mind began to drift. The office was abuzz with chatter, people coming and going, conversations about deadlines and the next big project. The air was thick with the usual tension that came with the competitive nature of the company. Alex barely registered the conversations around them, lost in their thoughts. It wasn't until a woman at the desk next to them spoke up that Alex snapped out of their reverie. "Hey, Alex," the woman called. Her name was Rachel, a colleague. They'd worked with for a while but had never really connected with. Rachel was friendly enough, but Alex had always thought of her as just another face in the crowd. "Yeah?" Alex replied, glancing over. "I just wanted to say," Rachel said, her smile warm, "I think you're doing an amazing job with that new project. Seriously, you've really taken the initiative and it shows. I admire how dedicated you are to making everything work." The words hit Alex like a sudden gust of wind. It wasn't just a casual compliment. It felt genuine. Rachel's tone was sincere, and for a moment, Alex felt something stir inside them. It wasn't a grand gesture, nor a life-changing declaration. It was a simple, kind acknowledgement of their hard work. "Thanks, Rachel," Alex responded, feeling the faintest spark of gratitude. It wasn't much, but for the first time in a long time, Alex felt seen. They had been so consumed with their internal struggles and the emptiness they felt about their job that they had forgotten how important it was to recognize even the smallest moments of validation. As the day continued, Alex found themselves thinking about Rachel's words. It was just a compliment, something that people often said without much thought. Yet, it had made a difference. It had lifted their spirits, even if just for a moment. It was a small act. But in that moment, it made a big impact. Alex found themselves wondering if their friend had been onto something. Maybe it wasn't such a ridiculous idea after all. Perhaps small acts of kindness really could change someone's day, even their own. That evening, when Alex returned home, they thought about the compliment again. They had been so focused on the negative aspects of their life that they had overlooked the potential for positive change. Maybe, just maybe, kindness was the missing piece they hadn't realized they were searching for. But before Alex could dwell on it too much, their phone buzzed with another message. It was from their old friend. "How's your day going? Any small acts of kindness you've experienced?" Alex smiled at the message. It felt like fate, or perhaps just a coincidence. But either way, it seemed like the universe was pushing them in a direction they hadn't expected. With a sigh, Alex began typing a response. "Well, funny you should ask. I actually received a compliment today. It was simple, but it made me feel better than I expected." As they hit send, Alex realized that they were already starting to think differently. The journey had just begun, and it had started with something as simple as a compliment. A small act of kindness that had awakened a feeling of possibility inside them. The next few days unfolded in much the same way as before. Alex went to work, dealt with the usual tasks, and returned home to a life that still felt somewhat disconnected. But something had shifted inside them. That one simple compliment from Rachel lingered in the back of their mind like a pebble dropped into a pond, rippling out in unexpected ways. It had been just a brief moment in time, but it had opened something inside Alex. A realization that kindness didn't have to be grand or life-altering to have an effect. The small moments, the everyday interactions, were more powerful than Alex had ever given them credit for. They began to notice things they hadn't before. The woman who held the door open for them at the coffee shop, the barista who remembered their usual order, the colleague who offered a quick, "How's it going?" in passing. All these small gestures added up, creating a sense of warmth, of connection that Alex hadn't known they were missing. And yet, despite all of this, Alex still felt somewhat distant from the idea of kindness. They weren't the type of person who typically reached out to others, who took the time to show empathy without being asked. Could they really embrace this idea? Was it something they could integrate into their life without feeling fake or out of place? One afternoon, as Alex sat in the break room sipping their coffee, deep in thought, their mind returned to their conversation with their friend. Small acts of kindness. Could they practice that themselves? The more they thought about it, the more it seemed like something worth trying. It wasn't about making a dramatic change, but simply being more aware of the opportunities for kindness in their daily routine. It wasn't long before another chance arose. As Alex walked back to their desk, they noticed that Mark, a colleague, who usually kept to himself, was sitting at the copy machine, staring at a piece of paper with furrowed brows. Alex had never been particularly close to Mark. They had exchanged a few words in passing, but he was known for his quiet nature, often isolating himself at work. Today, however, something about his posture caught Alex's attention. He looked frustrated, like he was struggling with something important. Before they could second-guess themselves, Alex walked over to him. "Hey, Mark, you okay?" Mark glanced up, startled, and for a brief moment, his eyes flickered with hesitation. Yeah, just trying to make sense of this report. I can't seem to get the numbers to align, and it's due in an hour." Alex glanced at the paper, seeing the rows of numbers that had clearly caused Mark's stress. They hesitated for a moment, but then a thought struck them. This was it, an opportunity for a small act of kindness. "You know, I'm pretty good with spreadsheets," Alex said with a smile. "I could take a look if you want." Mark looked up at Alex, clearly taken aback. "You would do that?" "Yeah, it's no problem at all," Alex replied. They sat down beside him, rolling up their sleeves and diving into the report. The task wasn't difficult for Alex, and after a few minutes of tweaking the formulas, the numbers lined up perfectly. Over the next few days, Alex found themselves paying closer attention to the small moments around them. They began to notice the little things, how someone would brighten their day with a simple greeting, or how a coworker might offer assistance with a task without being asked. At first it felt odd. Alex had been so used to keeping their head down and focusing on their own work that it felt almost foreign to pause and truly appreciate these small acts of kindness. But something about it was starting to feel right. The more Alex recognized these gestures, the more they felt a shift inside themselves. It wasn't about transforming their entire life overnight or suddenly becoming a completely different person. It was about embracing the small moments, the fleeting exchanges that often went unnoticed. One day, while on their lunch break, Alex took a walk outside. The crisp autumn air and the rustling of the leaves brought a sense of calm that they hadn't felt in a long time. They had been thinking a lot about the connection between kindness and personal fulfillment, trying to figure out how to integrate it into their own life. As Alex walked along the path, they noticed an older man struggling to carry a heavy bag. His movements were slow and labored, and he seemed to be having trouble balancing his load. Without thinking, Alex walked over to him and offered to help. "Do you need a hand with that?" Alex asked gently. The man looked up, his eyes full of surprise. "Oh, thank you," he said with a smile. "I wasn't sure how I was going to manage this on my own." Alex took the bag from him and helped him carry it a few blocks, chatting with the man along the way. His name was Mr. Keller, and he lived in the building just down the street. He mentioned that he had been struggling with his health recently, and that carrying heavy bags had become increasingly difficult. But as they walked together, Mr. Keller's mood seemed to lighten. He began telling Alex stories about his youth, about the adventures he'd had traveling the world and the lessons he had learned along the way. Alex listened intently, finding that they genuinely enjoyed the conversation. It was an easy connection, built on a simple gesture of kindness. When they reached Mr. Keller's building, the older man thanked Alex profusely. "I can't tell you how much I appreciate this," he said. "People don't always take the time to help anymore, and it means the world to me." Alex smiled and waved goodbye, walking back to their office with a sense of contentment they hadn't experienced before. The simple act of helping someone had made a huge impact, not just on Mr. Keller, but on Alex as well. For the first time in a long time, they felt like they had done something worthwhile. That evening, as Alex sat in their apartment, they couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. It had been such a small thing, just carrying a heavy bag for a few blocks. but it had made both of them feel connected, as though the world had become a little warmer, a little more human. And in that moment, Alex realized something important. The more kindness they gave, the more they received in return. It wasn't just about making someone else's day. It was about the fulfillment and joy that came with the act itself. The next day at work, Alex found themselves carrying a lighter attitude. They greeted their colleagues with more enthusiasm, made an effort to offer help when needed, and even took a few extra moments to engage in brief, meaningful conversations. They didn't expect anything in return. It was just part of who they were becoming. It wasn't long before someone noticed. As Alex sat at their desk, reviewing a project, a coworker named Sarah, who had been working in another department, came up to them. "Hey, Alex," Sarah said with a bright smile. "I just wanted to thank you for helping me last week. I was a little overwhelmed, and you stepped in to help me finish that presentation. It really made a difference, and I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate it." Alex was taken aback. They hadn't thought much of it at the time. It was just another small act of kindness. But to Sarah, it had meant the world. Alex smiled, feeling a warm flush of pride. "No problem at all. I'm glad I could help," Alex replied. But Sarah wasn't finished. "Honestly, it's more than that. I've noticed that lately you've been a lot more approachable and open. You've got this energy about you that makes people want to connect. It's kind of contagious." The words took Alex by surprise. They hadn't expected anyone to notice, let alone mention it. But there it was, proof that the small changes Alex had been making were beginning to ripple outward, affecting those around them in ways they hadn't anticipated. As Sarah walked away, Alex sat back in their chair, a sense of awe washing over them. It wasn't just about the compliment or the recognition. It was about the realization that their actions, no matter how small, were impacting others in a positive way. For the first time in a long time, Alex felt like they were part of something bigger than themselves. They weren't just going through the motions anymore. They were contributing to a cycle of kindness, one that had begun to take root in their life and spread to those around them. And that was just the beginning. "There we go. That should do it," Alex said, feeling a surge of satisfaction. Mark's face lit up with relief. "You're a lifesaver, Alex. Seriously, thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you." Alex smiled, feeling something shift inside. It wasn't a big deal, really. Just a few minutes of their time. But to Mark, it meant the world. In that brief moment, Alex realized that sometimes kindness didn't have to be a grand gesture. It didn't require a significant commitment or even a deep emotional investment. It could be as simple as offering a hand when someone needed it most. As Mark walked away, Alex sat back in their chair, a feeling of warmth spreading through them. They didn't know why, but it felt good. The idea of kindness, the small acts that had once seemed so insignificant, now felt like they were part of something bigger. It was a sense of connection that Alex hadn't felt in a long time. Later that evening, Alex found themselves reflecting on the day. The compliment from Rachel, the small interaction with Mark, it all seemed to be adding up, piece by piece. The world didn't have to be as cold and disconnected as they had thought. Even in the midst of their own struggles, they could still make a difference, even if it was just a small one, and that's when it hit them. Kindness had a ripple effect. One small act could spark something in another person, which could then inspire them to pay it forward. It was a chain reaction, a web of goodwill that stretched far beyond what Alex had ever imagined. With a newfound sense of purpose, Alex pulled out their phone and sent a message to their friend. "I helped Mark with a report today. It felt pretty good, actually. I think I'm starting to see what you mean about kindness." As they hit send, Alex couldn't help but smile. They were starting to believe in something they had long dismissed. They were starting to believe in the power of kindness. The weeks passed, and Alex found themselves increasingly immersed in the flow of kindness. Every day, there was a new opportunity to connect with someone, to offer help, or even just to smile and brighten a person's day. What had started as a simple experiment had now become an integral part of who they were. The feeling of fulfillment that came from these small acts was nothing short of transformative. They began to feel like they were living a life of purpose, one grounded in positivity and meaningful connections. However, life had a way of throwing curveballs, and it wasn't long before Alex was faced with a challenge that would test the very foundation of their newfound philosophy. It all started on a rainy Tuesday morning. Alex had woken up late, already feeling the weight of the day before it had even begun. As they rushed out the door, the rain came pouring down, drenching them before they even made it to their car. The morning seemed to go from bad to worse, with delays on the road and a series of minor frustrations. By the time Alex reached the office, they were exhausted and frustrated, feeling like the day had already gotten the best of them. To make matters worse, their manager, Greg, called them into his office as soon as they walked through the door. "Alex, I need to talk to you about something," Greg said, his tone more serious than usual. Alex followed him into the small office, a sense of dread creeping over them. They weren't sure what it was about, but they could tell that Greg wasn't in the best of moods. "I've been reviewing your work, and there are some things that need improvement, specifically your project with the marketing team," Greg began. "There have been delays, and the quality of the deliverables isn't up to par. I know you're capable of more than this, Alex, but I need to see more effort on your part." Alex felt a lump form in their throat. They had been working hard, doing their best to manage the demands of the job, but somehow, it never seemed to be enough. Greg's words stung, and for a moment, Alex felt the old self-doubt creep in, threatening to overshadow the progress they had made. "I understand," Alex said, trying to keep their voice steady. "I'll make sure to address the issues and get everything back on track." Greg nodded, but the look in his eyes was one of disappointment. "I know you can do better, Alex. Just don't let this slip." As they left Greg's office, Alex felt a familiar weight settle in their chest. It was the same feeling they had experienced so many times before, like they were constantly falling short, constantly not measuring up. The energy they had been cultivating, the kindness they had been giving, suddenly felt insignificant in the face of this new challenge. They sat at their desk, staring at their computer screen, unable to focus. The frustration from the morning seemed to be compounding. The weight of their manager's disappointment felt heavy, almost unbearable. For the first time in weeks, Alex found themselves questioning whether kindness was really enough. Maybe it wasn't just about being nice. Maybe they needed to be tougher, more ruthless, to survive in this cutthroat environment. As the day wore on, Alex's mood grew darker. They found themselves snapping at colleagues, ignoring emails, and retreating into their work. The small acts of kindness they had been practicing seemed trivial in comparison to the mountain of tasks that lay ahead. The pressure was mounting, and the thought of trying to balance their own well-being with the demands of the job seemed impossible. But as they sat there, trying to push through the frustration, something unexpected happened. Rachel, the colleague who had given Alex that compliment a few weeks earlier, approached their desk. She looked concerned. "Hey, Alex," she said softly. "You don't seem like yourself today. Is everything okay?" Alex hesitated. They didn't want to burden anyone with their problems, but for some reason, they felt compelled to speak up. "I don't know, Rachel. I just feel like everything's falling apart. I had a rough conversation with Greg, and now I'm questioning whether I'm good enough for this job. It's like I've been working so hard, but it's still not enough." Rachel listened quietly, nodding in understanding. "I get it. The pressure can be overwhelming sometimes. But you know, I've been watching you, and you've been making a difference. You've been showing up, being kind, helping others. That counts for something, Alex. Don't lose sight of that just because things get tough." Alex looked up at her, surprised. They hadn't expected such encouragement, especially not from someone they didn't know all that well, but Rachel's words resonated with them. Don't lose sight of that. The idea that kindness, that the effort to connect with others, still mattered even when everything else seemed to be falling apart. "Thanks, Rachel," Alex said, their voice a little steadier. "I needed to hear that." Rachel smiled warmly. "Anytime, Alex. You're doing great. Don't let one rough patch define you." As Rachel walked away, Alex sat there for a moment, processing her words. The weight of the challenge they faced with their job hadn't magically disappeared, but something had shifted inside them. They realized that despite the setbacks and the pressure, the kindness they had been practicing wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. It was a reminder that there was more to life than just the next task or the next deadline. There was value in showing up for others, even when it felt like they were barely holding it together themselves. That night, as Alex lay in bed, they reflected on the day's events. Yes, the challenge was real. The pressure at work was intense, and there were still areas that needed improvement. But the small moments of kindness, both the ones they had received and the ones they had given, reminded them of the bigger picture. They weren't just defined by their failures or their job performance. They were defined by the way they treated others, by the impact they had on the people around them. And with that realization, Alex made a promise to themselves. No matter how difficult things got, they would not lose sight of the power of kindness. It was the one thing they could control, the one thing that would keep them grounded through any storm. The next few days at work weren't easy. Alex had taken the feedback from Greg to heart, and despite the emotional setback, they had resolved to improve their work performance. The pressure was still there, looming large in the background, but Alex no longer felt consumed by it. They were more focused on finding balance, combining their personal growth and kindness with the demands of their professional life. However, integrating this new mindset wasn't as simple as they had hoped. Each morning felt like a new challenge. The weight of responsibility seemed to grow, and there were still days when Alex felt overwhelmed by everything on their plate. They worked late into the evening, double-checking their work, revising presentations, and sending countless emails. While they were striving to meet the expectations set for them, Alex also continued to make an effort to connect with others, small gestures here and there to keep their spirit in check. But one Friday afternoon, just when Alex thought they were beginning to get into a rhythm, things took a turn. It started with a miscommunication on a project, a misunderstanding that led to missed deadlines and an important meeting being rescheduled. The team was already behind, and Greg, visibly frustrated, called Alex into his office again. "I don't know what's going on, Alex, but this project is slipping through the cracks. You were the lead on this. What happened?" Greg asked, his voice sharp. Alex felt their stomach tighten. This was it, the moment they had been dreading. They had tried to stay positive, tried to balance everything, but now it felt like it was all falling apart. They had let Greg down again, and this time, there was no hiding behind the facade of optimism. "I'm sorry, Greg. There was a misunderstanding with the timeline, and I should have clarified it sooner," Alex responded, doing their best to keep their voice steady. Greg looked at Alex for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "This isn't the first time this has happened, Alex. I need to know that you can handle these responsibilities. This team needs leadership, and we're relying on you to make things right." The words stung, but they also sparked something in Alex. They had been doing their best, but it was clear that their best wasn't enough in Greg's eyes. For a moment, Alex considered walking away, considering if perhaps this job wasn't the right fit for them. Maybe they had been too naive to think they could balance kindness with the cutthroat environment of the workplace. But then, Alex remembered something Rachel had said to them a few days earlier. "Don't lose sight of that. Don't lose sight of the person you're becoming. The kind of person who doesn't give up when things get hard." "Okay," Alex said, taking a deep breath. "I'll fix this. I'll make it right." Greg seemed to soften slightly, nodding in approval. "I hope so, Alex. You've got potential. Just don't waste it." Walking out of Greg's office, Alex's mind was racing. They had to do something different. They couldn't afford to let this challenge define them. They needed to prove to themselves and to everyone else that they could persevere through the hardest times, the frustration, the disappointment. None of it could take away the growth they had worked so hard to achieve. They sat at their desk, surrounded by piles of paperwork, and looked at the project in front of them. It was daunting, to say the least, but for the first time in days, Alex felt a spark of determination. They wouldn't let this slip through their fingers. They would rise above it, even if it meant working harder than they ever had before. With renewed energy, Alex dove into the project. They cleared the distractions from their desk, set a timer to stay focused, and methodically worked through every task that needed attention. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of frustration when the weight of everything seemed too much to bear. But Alex kept pushing through. They reminded themselves of the bigger picture, the impact they were having on the people around them, the kindness that had started this journey. It was worth fighting for. By the end of the day, Alex had made significant progress. They had called the necessary meetings, clarified timelines with the team, and reorganized the workload. It wasn't perfect, but it was a huge improvement. They sent an update to Greg, explaining the steps they had taken to address the issues. Saturday arrived, and Alex continued to work late into the night, making sure everything was in place for the rescheduled meeting. The exhaustion was setting in, but they were more determined than ever. The sense of accomplishment that came with the small victories, the steady progress they were making, was enough to keep them going. When the meeting finally took place on Monday, Alex was ready. They presented the updated work with confidence, addressing each concern that had come up and offering solutions to ensure the project stayed on track. To their surprise, Greg seemed impressed. "You've done well to get things back on course, Alex," he said, nodding in approval. "Keep it up." The weight that had been pressing down on Alex's shoulders lifted slightly. This was only the beginning, but it was a significant step forward. The challenge hadn't been easy, but the perseverance it had required had shown Alex what they were truly capable of. They weren't just a worker following instructions. They were someone who could rise to the occasion, someone who could lead by example, even in the face of adversity, and that was a victory in itself. As the days passed, the pressure at work began to ease. The project that had once seemed like an insurmountable mountain was now moving forward steadily. Alex had regained Greg's trust and, in the process, had learned a valuable lesson about their own resilience. They realized that success wasn't just about avoiding failure or meeting expectations. It was about how you responded when things went wrong. It was about showing up, doing the work, and finding strength in moments of difficulty. However, the most significant change was happening within Alex. The small acts of kindness that had once been part of a personal experiment had now become something much deeper, an intrinsic part of their approach to life. It wasn't just about the occasional smile or helping a colleague with a task. It was about bringing positivity into every aspect of their life, especially when things seemed bleak. One evening, as Alex walked out of the office, they spotted a homeless man sitting on the sidewalk near the entrance. His clothes were ragged, and his face bore the tired expression of someone who had endured countless struggles. He was holding a sign that simply read, "Anything helps." Alex stopped, unsure of what to do. The streets were busy with people, rushing to their destinations, not giving a second glance to those who were less fortunate. But something in Alex's heart urged them to do something. They reached into their pocket and pulled out a few bills, walking over to the man. "Hey, I know it's not much, but I hope this helps," Alex said, handing him the money. The man looked up, his eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you so much," he said, his voice shaky. "You're the first person today who actually stopped." "Thank you." Alex smiled, a warmth spreading through them. The man's words stuck with them long after they had left. It wasn't the amount of money that mattered. It was the simple act of recognizing another person, of treating them with kindness when the world around them seemed to be indifferent. As Alex continued on their walk home, they couldn't help but reflect on how much the small changes they had made in their own life were now affecting the world around them. The ripple effect was real. Kindness was contagious. And every gesture, no matter how small, had the power to create a chain reaction. The next day at work, Alex's outlook had shifted. They still had responsibilities, deadlines, and challenges to face, but they no longer felt overwhelmed by them. They had learned that the key to navigating life's obstacles wasn't about avoiding the tough times or being perfect. It was about how you faced them and how you chose to respond. Alex made a conscious effort to continue spreading positivity wherever they could. It wasn't always easy. There were still moments when stress threatened to take over, when frustration bubbled to the surface. But every time Alex remembered the ripple effect of their actions, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't about grand gestures or achieving some ultimate goal. It was about showing up each day with a willingness to make the world a little better, one small step at a time. One morning, Alex received an unexpected email. It was from Rachel, the colleague who had offered them such encouraging words a few weeks ago. "I just wanted to say thank you again for everything. Your positivity has made such a difference in the team. It's like you've changed the whole atmosphere around here. You've helped me more than you know, and I can see it in the others too. I'm really grateful to work with you, Alex." Alex, sat back in their chair, surprised by the email. They had never expected their efforts to have such an impact. They had been so focused on their own growth that they hadn't realized how much their attitude and actions were influencing others. This was the ripple effect in action, a reminder that kindness, no matter how subtle, could touch lives in ways that were often unseen. The next few weeks flew by, and Alex continued to grow both personally and professionally. The work challenges were still there, but they no longer seemed insurmountable. With each challenge, Alex grew stronger, more confident, and more determined to approach everything with the same sense of resilience and kindness. But it wasn't just at work that Alex noticed the change. The people around them seemed to be responding differently too. Friends reached out more often, colleagues became more willing to collaborate, and even strangers seemed to open up in ways they hadn't before. It was as though the energy Alex was putting into the world was being returned tenfold. One afternoon, Alex ran into an old friend, Sam, whom they hadn't spoken to in months. They hadn't expected the encounter, but it was a pleasant surprise. "Hey, Alex, it's been forever," Sam said, grinning. "How's everything going? You look different, like, I don't know, lighter, happier, maybe?" Alex laughed, surprised by the comment. "Yeah, I guess I've been working on some things, trying to live a little more intentionally, just focusing on kindness, on being present, and not letting the stress get the best of me." Sam raised an eyebrow. "Kindness? That's interesting. I'm not sure I could do that all the time, especially with the way life throws curveballs at us." "Well, it's not always easy," Alex admitted. "But I've found that the more I focus on showing up for others, the more it's changed how I feel about everything. It's like I'm part of something bigger, something good." Sam nodded thoughtfully. "That's actually really inspiring, Alex. Maybe I need to try that too. I could use a little more positivity in my life." As they parted ways, Alex couldn't help but smile. They had always known the power of kindness, but now they were seeing it in full effect. It was a reminder that even the smallest changes could create ripples, that every person had the power to impact the world in ways they might never fully understand. And for Alex, that was enough. The journey was far from over, but the path ahead was filled with possibility, with hope, and with the belief that every action, no matter how small, could lead to something greater. As Alex continued to navigate their personal and professional growth, they began to realize something profound. True success wasn't measured by external achievements or recognition, but by the inner transformation that occurred through perseverance, self-reflection, and the willingness to evolve. The pressure of the past few months had shaped Alex into someone stronger, more grounded, and deeply connected to the people around them. But this wasn't an overnight transformation. It was a gradual process, one where Alex had to face their doubts, confront their insecurities, and challenge their comfort zones. It was a journey that required patience, resilience, and the understanding that progress wasn't linear. Sometimes there were setbacks. Other times, there were breakthroughs. But every step was part of the path to something more meaningful. One weekend, Alex took a break from the usual routine, deciding to spend the day alone in nature. It had been a long while since they had allowed themselves the space to just breathe, to disconnect from the constant noise of everyday life. They drove to a quiet park on the outskirts of the city, a place they used to visit when they were younger, where the trees seemed to whisper and the air felt fresh and untainted. Sitting on a bench by the lake, Alex closed their eyes and listened to the sounds of the world around them. The rustling of leaves, the gentle lapping of water against the shore, and the occasional bird call. It was peaceful, but it also felt different now. There was a quietness that came with the journey Alex had been on, a sense of clarity they hadn't had before. For the first time in a long time, they weren't thinking about the next deadline, the next task, or the next challenge. They were simply present, taking in the beauty of the moment. As they sat there, lost in thought, Alex reflected on the past few months, the highs, the lows, the victories, and the setbacks. They thought about their conversations with Rachel, the difficult moments with Greg, the kindness they had shown to others, and the impact those small gestures had had on their own life. It was easy to get lost in the rush of everyday responsibilities, but moments like these reminded them that the journey was just as important as the destination. A soft breeze stirred the air, and Alex smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. They hadn't expected to be where they were now. They had imagined a life defined by ambition, success, and recognition. But now, they realized that their real purpose wasn't found in titles or achievements. It was found in the growth they had experienced, the relationships they had cultivated, and the person they had become in the process. It was in this stillness that Alex understood the most valuable lesson of all. Life was about embracing the journey, not just reaching the destination. There would always be challenges, setbacks, and obstacles along the way, but each one held a lesson, a chance to grow, and an opportunity to become stronger. By the time Alex left the park that afternoon, they felt a renewed sense of clarity. The world hadn't changed, but they had. They weren't the same person who had walked into that office months ago, uncertain and overwhelmed by the pressures of their work. They weren't the same person who had struggled to find their place. They were someone who had learned to face adversity with grace, to embrace vulnerability, and to rise above the challenges that came their way. That evening, as Alex sat at their desk at home, they received a message from Sam, the friend they had run into a few days earlier. "Hey, I've been thinking about our conversation," Sam's message began. "I've been trying to focus more on kindness and slowing down a bit. It's not easy, but I can already feel a difference. Thanks for inspiring me. I think we all need a little more of that in our lives." Alex smiled at the message, a sense of fulfillment washing over them. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic changes. It was the small, consistent efforts to be better, to be kinder, to be more present. That was what mattered. The next day, Alex returned to work with a renewed sense of purpose. The projects were still there, the deadlines still loomed, and the expectations hadn't changed. But Alex no longer saw them as burdens. Instead, they viewed each challenge as an opportunity to grow, to show up as the best version of themselves, and to help others do the same. Over the next few months, Alex's influence in the workplace grew, not because of their technical skills or their ability to meet deadlines, but because of the positive energy they brought into every room. People began to approach them for advice, not just on work-related matters, but on how to handle stress, how to navigate challenges, and how to maintain balance in their lives. Alex had become a source of inspiration, not through a carefully crafted image or external success, but through their authenticity, kindness, and unwavering commitment to personal growth. One afternoon, as Alex was preparing for a meeting, Greg walked over to their desk. Alex looked up, surprised by the unexpected visit. "You've come a long way, Alex," Greg said, his voice softer than usual. "I know I've been tough on you, but I've seen a change in you, your attitude, your approach. It's making a difference not just for you, but for the whole team. Keep it up." Alex felt a rush of gratitude. Greg's words weren't the praise they had expected, but they were exactly what they needed to hear. It was the validation of all the hard work, the long nights, and the moments of doubt. It was a reminder that, sometimes, growth didn't come from recognition or accolades. It came from the quiet satisfaction of knowing that you had stayed true to yourself. As Alex left the office that evening, they felt a sense of peace. They had come a long way, but they also knew that the journey was far from over. There were still mountains to climb, still challenges to face, but now Alex felt ready for whatever came next. Because the greatest victory wasn't in the destination, it was in the courage to keep going, the willingness to grow, and the ability to embrace the journey, no matter where it led. As Alex continued to embrace their new mindset, a transformation began to unfold in unexpected ways. The changes that had initially started small, through acts of kindness and moments of self-reflection, had taken on a deeper significance. The more Alex lived authentically, the more they felt in tune with their true self, the person they had always been beneath the layers of doubt and uncertainty. At work, Alex's reputation as someone who was not only skilled, but also compassionate and approachable began to spread. Colleagues from different departments started reaching out for help, some with professional matters, but others seeking advice on personal challenges. Alex had become a beacon of light in a workplace that, in many ways, had felt cold and transactional. It wasn't just the projects they had worked on or the deadlines they had met that set them apart. It was their willingness to lend an ear, to show empathy, and to create an environment where people felt safe to be themselves. One afternoon, Rachel called Alex into her office. She had been a close ally throughout the past few months, and they had grown comfortable with each other's company. Alex entered the office, wondering if something had gone wrong, but Rachel's welcoming smile put them at ease. "Alex," she began, "I've been meaning to talk to you. I've noticed something incredible happening in our team, and it's all thanks to you. I've been watching you, not just at work but in the way you interact with everyone. You've made such a positive impact here. People are more willing to collaborate, to support each other. It's not just the work that's improved, it's the entire dynamic of the team. I think you've helped us all realize something we didn't see before. It's about people, not just the task at hand. Thank you." Alex sat there, stunned by Rachel's words. They hadn't realized the extent of their influence until now. It wasn't the result of a grand strategy or a specific action. They hadn't set out to change the team or the culture, but by staying true to themselves, by being a person others could trust and turn to, they had inadvertently created something much more valuable than any individual accomplishment: a sense of community and belonging. "I didn't expect to hear that," Alex said, a bit embarrassed. "I just did what felt right, you know? I just focused on being a good colleague and a kind person. I didn't think it would have such an impact." Rachel smiled knowingly. "Sometimes the smallest actions can create the biggest shifts. You've shown all of us that success isn't just about what we achieve. It's about how we treat each other along the way. And that's the kind of leader people follow." Alex felt a wave of humility wash over them. They had never considered themselves a leader, not in the traditional sense at least. They had simply been someone who, for once, decided to put others first, to offer support when it was needed, and to cultivate a sense of positivity and openness. But now, they understood what Rachel meant. Leadership didn't always come in the form of titles or promotions. It came through actions, through the ability to connect, to inspire, and to create an environment where people felt valued. Alex had been leading by example, without even realizing it, simply by embodying the values they had come to cherish. Later that week, Alex was invited to give a short talk at a company-wide meeting. It was an unexpected invitation, but one that felt right, given the circumstances. They were nervous, unsure of what to say. They had never been one to seek the spotlight, but they knew this was an opportunity to share the lessons they had learned on their journey. Standing in front of the room, Alex looked around at their colleagues. They had spent so many months feeling overwhelmed by the pressure of their work, and yet here they were, in this moment, feeling more connected to everyone than ever before. They cleared their throat, gathered their thoughts, and began speaking from the heart. "Hey everyone, I'm not here to talk about the work we've done or the projects we're tackling," Alex began, trying to steady their nerves. "Instead, I want to talk about something that's been really important to me lately, about the way we show up for each other. I've learned that it's not just the work that matters, but how we treat each other along the way. We all have our challenges, our bad days, and our moments of doubt. But the real success comes when we support each other, when we show up with kindness and respect, and when we lift each other up." They paused, looking around at the faces in the room. Alex could see the subtle nods, the quiet acknowledgement of shared experiences. There was a sense of unity in the air, a realization that they weren't alone in their struggles, that everyone had been through something and had emerged stronger. "None of us can do it alone," Alex continued, their voice growing more confident. "And when we focus on kindness, empathy, and genuine connection, we create something more powerful than any goal or project could ever give us. We create a culture of trust, of belonging, and that's the real measure of success." When Alex finished speaking, there was a moment of silence. Then a round of applause filled the room. It wasn't the kind of applause given to a performance, but the kind that came from genuine appreciation. In that moment, Alex realized that they had found their true voice, not just as a colleague, but as a person. Someone who didn't need to chase after success because they had already found it within themselves. As the weeks passed, Alex's sense of fulfillment grew deeper. Their journey of self-discovery wasn't just about transforming themselves, it was about inspiring others to embark on their own paths of growth. Alex had unlocked a powerful truth. The most enduring legacies weren't built on accomplishments alone, but on the positive impact one had on the lives of others. At work, things had shifted. The team was no longer just a group of individuals working toward deadlines. They had become a community, one where everyone felt valued and supported. There was more collaboration, more openness, and more trust. People felt empowered to speak their minds, share their ideas, and support one another. And it wasn't just at work. This sense of connectedness and mutual respect began to spill over into their personal lives as well. One evening, Alex met up with Rachel for coffee after work. They sat in a quiet corner of their favorite cafe, sipping warm drinks as they caught up. Rachel, always quick with a smile, leaned forward and gave Alex a knowing look. "You've really done something amazing," she said. "I've never seen the team so connected. It's not just about work anymore. It's about the people. You've set the tone, Alex. You've shown us all that being human comes first. Success will follow." Alex smiled, humbled by her words. "It hasn't been easy," they admitted. "I've had my doubts, and I still do sometimes. But I realized that if I wasn't true to myself, I'd never feel fulfilled. I think that's what made the difference. Staying true to what matters most, not just to me, but to everyone else." Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's funny how the things we resist the most, like vulnerability and authenticity, are the very things that bring us closer to each other. You've helped us see that we're not just working on projects, we're working on relationships, on growth." Alex leaned back in their chair, thinking about everything they had experienced. They had come a long way from the person who used to obsess over every detail, afraid to make mistakes or show weakness. They had learned that true strength came from being open, from embracing their imperfections, and from understanding that the path to success wasn't a straight line. "No," Alex said, a slight smile tugging at their lips. "I used to think that success meant doing everything perfectly, meeting every goal, and impressing everyone around me. But now, I think success means living authentically, being kind, and helping others do the same. Because when we're all growing, when we're all lifting each other up, that's when the real magic happens." Rachel's eyes sparkled with admiration. "That's exactly it. You've created something lasting, Alex. You've built a legacy, not of accolades or promotions, but of growth, kindness, and connection. And that's something no one can take away from you." As they finished their coffee and said their goodbyes, Alex walked out into the cool evening air, feeling lighter than they had in months. They looked up at the sky, watching as the stars began to twinkle above them. The journey had been long and often difficult, but every moment had been worth it. The mistakes, the doubts, the breakthroughs, they had all shaped them into the person they were today. But more than anything, Alex had learned to embrace the beauty of the journey itself. They didn't need to chase after success anymore. Success had come to them through their willingness to grow, to be kind, and to share their journey with others. Over time, Alex's influence continued to spread. Colleagues began to share their own stories of growth, of personal challenges and triumphs. The workplace became a place of mutual respect, understanding, and empathy. Alex's story had inspired others to embark on their own journeys, to find their own paths to fulfillment. Years later, when Alex looked back on everything they had accomplished, they realized that the greatest achievement of all was the impact they had had on the people around them. They hadn't just changed their own life, they had changed the lives of many others, simply by being authentic, by showing up with kindness, and by offering support whenever it was needed. The legacy Alex had built wasn't about titles or accolades. It was about the lives they had touched, the hearts they had opened, and the growth they had fostered. It was a legacy of human connection, of understanding, and of the quiet but powerful force of kindness. As Alex continued on their journey, they carried with them the knowledge that success wasn't something to be chased. It was something that happened when you showed up as your true self, when you helped others rise, and when you embraced the journey with all its challenges and triumphs. And in the end, that was the greatest success of all.